Hello and welcome back to this week's vlog from me. I'm Jakob Anker Nielsen. I'm talking about the Certified Technical Architect program and my experience going through this. So we are now on week 6. I'm officially halfway through this course. It's actually already bittersweet because I do like to be a part of this cohort and experience, but also, it's nice to also finish stuff. So it is bittersweet. Happy to be here. This week we have discussed a bit about security as well as scoped applications and how these two mesh together. It falls well in line with last week's topic where we did discuss how you kind of provide an instance architecture when it comes to, do you want domain separation? Should you go for multiple instance strategy or purposeful customization of your instances to separate different data from different people? So while that is more on the separation or organization of the data within the system, then the security aspect then brings focus on the levels of the database and application and to the network layer or internet layer as well. So on the different layers, we have different options to provide security to ServiceNow. The database layer, it can be encrypted. So when the data is at rest, it would be encrypted, so not just in transactions. And on the application layer, you could also do some like column level encryption, for example. And you could, in tokenization, and you could do some, on the network layer, you could do the more heavy one called edge encryption, where everything that is already sent from the customer organization into ServiceNow is encrypted before it ever hits ServiceNow. It comes with a lot of overhead in terms of manageability and additional cost in infrastructure, as you need some on-premise proxy server and stuff like this as well. So, but it is about figuring out what level of security do you need, which in turn probably falls back to primarily if you have some regulations that you would need to live up to ensure that you're not sharing or showcasing specific data to specific people. And to let that guide it, one of the points from today's discussion in the cohort, which I like, is that it's difficult to really advise a customer to say, this is the security that you need, because at the end of the day, it is very much dependent on the context of the customer organization that they live in and they need to comply with. So it would involve having intimate knowledge with this context before any such advisory could be given. Though that is of course attainable, while the most efficient path there still being having the customer or the organization that is looking for an improved security stance with ServiceNow to understand the different options available to them and to have them take a decision from there. The other topic that we were discussing, it's scoped applications. Scoped applications, that's an interesting topic. So in ServiceNow, as you know, we do have the global scope and we have some other scopes like for customer service management and for HR, for financial services, for strategic portfolio management, and so on and so on. So a question that many implementers are sometimes struggling with is, should this be a scoped application or not? Which is a very interesting question. So when you get a new feature request, something you want to do, would it then be best practice to do it in the global scope, as a scope within the global scope, or as its own scope? I'd like to share my 2 cents on this, and your input is, of course, very much welcome. So first of all, do we need to have a scope? A scope is excellent in its way of scoping and protecting certain functionality and data from outside influence, being other scopes and processes and functionality and data within the ServiceNow instance. Because the scope is exclusive, we are able to provide cross-scope privilege records that describe exactly who is allowed to do what with different functions and data within what scopes. That gives a much better overview and auditability when it comes to understanding how your ServiceNow platform intermingles. Let's imagine that you are now doing some changes to the incident management process. Let's say that you're doing this in the normal global scope with update set upon update set. And through incremental change, you start to realize that this is becoming its own little feature or leg of incident management that is not there out of the box, which may be justified. And maybe it's such a good idea that in a couple of releases, you find that ServiceNow has even replicated what it is that you have been customizing for so long. So of course, the best thing that you can do now is revert to the out-of-the-box option, as that will have been through a bunch of, first of all, quality assurance, and more importantly, you also get the features out of the box, meaning that it's supportable, so you can actually make now support cases if you have any sort of issues with it, and you can remove yourself from the cost of ownership because you already paid for the license and products inside of ServiceNow. So why pay for it twice by doing it yourself besides this? So you want to go back to out of the box. However, since you did all of this in update sets, it is near impossible to figure out in this intertwined mess of update sets what belongs where and why did we do it, in what order was it implemented, and so on. Near impossible. So getting back to out of the box becomes, first of all, a big analysis body of work to figure out all of this. Why did we do the things that we did, and to just on trying to make this mess something that you can actually get out of requires a lot of work as well. Now imagine that you did it in a scope instead. So you realize that the feature here, or the changes that I'm doing, has the potential to be a larger thing. It probably will grow incrementally. These requirements will not stop. Then you could be doing it inside a global scope, not the global scope, but a scope that is global. So you scope this augmentation of the incident process in its own little compartment here. And if you do not realize from day one, which is totally fair and reasonable, that this incident feature here, you don't realize it will increment and change into something entirely new when it comes to incident management, and it's a new third leg that should have been scoped. Then what you probably should be doing is to, as soon as you realize that you're adding increments to this and you get to the eureka, oh, this probably should have been a scope, and that is what you're going to do before you proceed. So you create the scope and you migrate the changes into the scope before doing more incremental changes to it. And now in 2 releases, if ServiceNow then does mirror whatever you have been doing in your instance, you would be able to press uninstall and update to the latest ServiceNow release, and you're good to go. Obviously, there's some data and so on that you need to take care of. However, I think it shows the point of why a scope can be a good idea to use. So when should you use a scope? I would say if a name would suit whatever you're doing besides incident management, for example. So you're putting something onto incident management. Let's say that it's actually related to service level agreement and you're doing something specifically for a managed service provider setup where they need to be able to do something with the SLA process that is not really applicable to normal IT organizations, because you have this reseller setup, for example. In this situation here, you might want to consider creating a scope, because you are making an addition to the SLA engine, or you're making something that is significantly different, and you could give it a name such as SLA for MSPs. So if it can carry a name, maybe it should be a scope. Maybe, I think that could be a rule of thumb. Probably not a golden cookie cutter that will fit any time. Otherwise, you could think of it as the changes that I'm going to do, would they incur future changes that would significantly diverge from the out-of-the-box behavior, or is it an entirely new thing that doesn't directly relate to anything out of the box? That's also a good scope. If it is just small amendments or modifications to out-of-the-box functionality, like adding a line to a script, and you don't foresee that it will incur any future changes, then that's maybe not a good scope. But as soon as you realize that it is, as mentioned, an incremental change and it becomes its own theme worthy of carrying a name, then it's probably time to consider scope. All right, that was one of the longer videos I see, but I hope you did find some value in it. I apparently couldn't stop myself from talking, so all right. That was on the topic of scoped applications, and I do hope that you enjoyed this vlog here on the 6th week of the Certified Technical Architect program. I will be sharing more next week. Until then, have an excellent day. Bye.